list. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Mac and Jack Sports Show, our Sunday edition, This Week in Sports. Streaming live on Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, and Zodiac TV, on Mac Sports and Northeast Streaming Sports Facebook pages. Please follow and share our Facebook page. Subscribe to the Northeast Streaming Sports YouTube channel for all the great Northeast Streaming Sports shows. We're also on Instagram and Twitter. Our website is nessp.info for info on all our shows, guests, bios, stores, and links to those stores. I'm Mac with your co-host, Jack Hirsch, legendary boxing writer and former president of the Boxing Writers Association of America, together bringing you national sports with special focus on Northeast professional sports from New York, Boston, and Philly. Good morning, Jack. How are we doing today?
Good morning. Doing great, Mac. How are you?
Not too bad. I mean, I'm pretty excited about today's show, Jack. Today, folks, coming around 8:30, we got our weekly guest, Sports Scope Robert Butler, very opinionated. He's got a lot of different things that we'll cover with him. And today, Jack, for his debut appearance on the Mac and Jack Sports Show, is Jim Jeffcoat, two-time Super Bowl champion of the Dallas Cowboys, Hall of Fame nominee, and the second leading person in sacks of the Cowboys' history, and they had a lot of great defensive linemen, Jack.
You know, Mac, I have mixed feelings about this. On one end, I'm ecstatic. Jim Jeffcoat, you don't know how excited I am. Two-time Super Bowl champion, Dallas Cowboy legend, 3 years with the Buffalo Bills afterwards with, you know, their iconic players as well. 15-year NFL career, but I'm no longer the authority in football. I got demoted from this team when it comes to the football talk. This is a demotion. I lost my starting position as an analyst on the Mac and Jack show. I lost it to Jim Jeffcoat. I got to now come off the bench unless Jim is missing a week due to injury or whatever. You know, my role is diminished on the Mac and Jack football end of things.
Well, I'll tell you, it's diminished when we have Byron Williams on too, Jack. So, I mean, you're used to that. So having him on will be great to listen to a person who actually.
You can have me on the practice squad, Max, soon.
Yes.
I can watch from the studio, but I can't get on the air.
Exactly.
Okay? I mean,
exactly. So, I mean, you know, even with Jim, we're gonna find out, you know, a little bit of a chemistry together with him and all that good stuff. And real quick, Jack, I want to go ahead and share one of the plays I remember from Jim Jeffcoat, and me, of course, being a lifetime New York Giant fan, and I don't show it that much on the show because I want to be as what's the right word, fair as I can be, because we do represent all the Northeast Streaming Sports, Northeast Streaming teams, I should say. I don't know why I say streaming; it's just secondhand now. But the Northeast professional sports we talk about, we represent. But for the folks out there, I am a lifelong Giant fan, and the Dallas Cowboys owned us for a long time until the 80s. But there was one year in 1985 when Jim Jeffcoat did this to us in a title game. And people at home, just see how great this defensive end was.
First down and 10. I'd say he likes to win. It's batted out and intercepted. Jim Jeffcoat will score.
Now, he did this twice against us, John. But I remember this play specifically. So this is when he played with Too Tall Jones and Dutton, as you see there. Phil Simms was the quarterback. This was in 1985 when we went to championship. And Dallas gave us everything we could handle.
Septien will try and tie it up.
Mac, why are we seeing the extra point? Is that a highlight?
Relax. Of course, we're going to review the play again, Jack.
Okay.
You're a nut. There we go, Jack. That's why we're seeing it again.
You're going to see as he comes around, and then Jeffcoat comes up inside, and he comes behind Simms. Now, there's the play. Now, here comes Jeffcoat in the bottom left. Now, up top, you see Jones coming inside, gets that big right hand in there. Then Jeffcoat comes up inside, picks it up, and lumbers down the field. Look at the stride on this guy. 77. He looked like Larry Cole at his finest.
So, Jack, that's what I remember being a Giant fan for years in the 70s. I remember the Dallas Cowboys kicking our butt, and we were finally, coming into our own as the Giants of the 80s. And still, I mean, there was Too Tall, there was Jeffcoat, and Dallas did it to us, at least for that play again. And so anyway, that's the kind of defensive end he was. He made big plays, a lot of sacks, and a lot of plays on D. So he'll be up later, folks. We'll have Jim Jeffcoat with us. So for now, Jack, let's get to this week in sports. A lot of things have been going on. You had the rookie mini camps in football, the volunteer OTAs, and fans will be allowed to go back, and you'll be able to see all the fans in the stadiums right now. They're going into the playoffs with NHL and NBA. And in the NBA, we've been having some problems, Jack. There's like 3 separate incidents that I know of. One in Philadelphia with the fans pouring popcorn over Westbrook's head. Another one in New York where Trae Young was spit at. And again, in Utah with Morant's father and mother being called names and sexually explicit names to his mother. So these fans are getting removed, banned from the game, and banned as season ticket holders. And I don't know if that's because the fans are just coming back in and they don't know how to act. But I have a feeling, Jack, there are just certain people that are that way. And they're trying to control it more now. Where, especially in the NBA, Jack, it's more personal. You're on the court. There's nothing separating you from the fans. And you can hear almost everything that's going on if you're close enough. So in basketball, anyway, they're having problems, and they're trying to correct that right now, Jack.
Mac, I gave it a lot of thought because we talked a little about this before. And one position I'm never going to change is you can't cross a line and ever commit any physical act. You just can't do that. You can't dump popcorn on someone else. I mean, someone might say it's only popcorn, but to me, that's a form of assault. When you get physical with someone in any way, shape, or form, you can't throw a bottle at them. You can't block their way to an entrance. You can't do anything that's going to inhibit them or invade their personal space in a physical manner or a mental, emotional manner shouldn't as well. I give some of the blame to the league, believe it or not. And I give some of the blame to the players because there's a thing that the league glorifies and the players glorify, and it's called trash talking. The league allows the players to get away with it. Who's going into the Hall of Fame this year? A great, great player, Kevin Garnett, who was one of the worst trash talkers who would make it personal. Let me remind you, after one game against the Knicks, Carmelo Anthony went after him, went to his locker room, tried to go after Kevin Garnett on his team's bus. That's how furious Carmelo Anthony was because of the lines of trash talking that Kevin Garnett went over. Okay? Why doesn't the league do anything about that? Why didn't they suspend Garnett? Why didn't they prohibit it? Why don't they have a memo? Anyone talking in any personal manner, way, shape, or form about the opposition, they're going to be strict penalties there. They don't do that. And how does all these things get started? Fans, players, they don't react negatively just off the bat for no reason at all, just because the opposition scored on them. That could upset them a great deal. But you taunt them, you push them, you put them down. You know, it's flat out wrong, and that fuels the situation. Now, it's one thing, Mac, if you're trying to gain a psychological edge only to help you on the court. You score on someone, you go all day long, you can't stop me. Okay, stuff like that I can be okay with to a point. But when you start talking about the guy's family, you swish a basket on a defender and you say something to the effect, any player, like, oh, that's I was with your mama last night, this or that, and really get him going. There was one player that Gary Payton's agent talked to another player's agent. I forgot to play it, but that player was upset because Gary Payton was saying things about his family that struck a personal chord. And that player was very upset in the locker room. So Gary Payton was told to go to the player to apologize, which he did, but he crossed lines, okay? And these fans who are sitting in the stands, they might be hearing trash talk coming at them, and then they react in a foolish way by trash talking, even worse, but by crossing a line they shouldn't cross. Let's nip it in the bud early, and the league has to do that, and the league hasn't done that.
Yeah, I mean, you make a valid point there, Jack. I mean, especially I don't know how many times I can emphasize this, but especially in basketball, because as you see, Spike Lee's up on the court running around. You got all these other people that are right there with the players, and they're talking to the players because there's no partition, there's no room, there's no buffer. Where in most sports, that's what you have. You have a buffer where you, even though you're yelling and they might be able to hear you, it's not personable, Jack. And when you're in there, the huddle with the players and you're one row back and you hear everything the coach and the players are saying, it becomes personable. And I think that's something basketball is going to have to take a look at. I know they would hate to do that, but if this stuff keeps up, you might have to sacrifice that. You can't expect a bunch of people who are so involved in the game, unlike any other sport, Jack, and even unlike soccer, where they're so involved in the game that they're right there in the game itself. There's no other sport like that. So either basketball is going to have to come up with a way to monitor it closely, which is going to take a lot of time and a lot of money and a lot of things, or they're either going to have to put a partition up if they want them that close. They're going to have to make a decision eventually. You can't keep yelling at the fans for anything, because what ends up happening is if you yell something and they mishear it, or if you yell something that is maybe okay, you're going to end up banning fans, and it's going to turn the fans off even more to basketball than they have been in the past couple of years.
And the players too. A visiting team's player, their team wins the game one, and they're holding their finger to their lips like this, like, okay, quiet, like taunting the fans. A lot of times the players start with the fans, and what was the crime of the fans? Cheering loudly for their team. But now the player, by holding his finger to his lips, putting his hands down to the crowd, they're starting to make it personal.
Yeah.
They're starting to make it personal with the opposing team's fans, and they're a visiting player. What do they expect the next game? The fans to come all timid and quiet? They're egging the fans on. They're making it worse. Now, listen, I'll say it over and over again. Getting physical, throwing things at players, cursing at them, saying bad things about their family, totally unacceptable. They should be banned from the arena if they do that. But if the fans are going to act in a very loud way against the player, they're going to call him a bum. They're going to go, you're nothing at all. You're nothing. You're nothing. You're nothing. That to me is not personal. That's being a fan fans are allowed to boo. Fans are allowed to make noise, okay? A lot of noise. They're allowed to shout out things at the other players, okay? As long as they don't get physical, they don't say anything that's too personal, anything like that. You could talk about their game. You could put down their game all they want. You could laugh at their shot if they miss a shot. You could egg them on. Like, listen, when the Yankees and Red Sox had the rivalry and Pedro Martinez would come and they go, who's your daddy? Because Pedro Martinez made that thing. They would shout it. That's fair game. Darryl Strawberry, I think when he was playing in the World Series against the Red Sox, they go, the fans in Boston would go, Darryl, Darryl, Darryl. They were mocking him in a way, but it was fair game, completely fair game.
I agree. I agree. Yeah. Listen, you're inviting people who you don't know personally. You're giving people you don't know personally tickets. I mean, what are you going to do? You're gonna do background checks on the fans? I don't think so. So, Jack, let's talk a little bit about the NHL playoffs and the NBA playoffs. Right, the NHL playoffs. The Bruins and the Islanders are already battling for the East Division. The Bruins are up 1-0. The Lightning and the Hurricanes are going to start going at it. The Knights in Colorado, but still we're waiting on the North round, right? I mean, the first round of the playoffs, the Montreal Canadiens came back in overtime and they tied. Well, they won in overtime, beating the Toronto Maple Leafs, who have owned that division all year, Jack. So they got it to 3-3. Again, I know we talked about it, but this is This Week in Sports. If Montreal, by some reason, beats the Toronto Maple Leafs, this has been an abysmal season for Toronto, don't you think?
It has. And can you imagine not only losing the series, but being up 3-1 and losing the last 3? This reminds me a little bit, I don't know why I'm making a baseball comparison, to the 1960 World Series where the Pittsburgh Pirates beat the Yankees 4-3. And they got beat up pretty bad in their 3 losses. But in all 4 wins, they just managed to eke out victories. And the Canadiens, out of their 3 wins, one was by 1 goal and the other 2 in overtime. And 7th game, anything could happen at this point. And can you imagine they lose it in Toronto? How do you come back next year? I mean, this is supposed to be the year the Maple Leafs are making a serious run at the Cup. And to lose to a Montreal team, even though they're steeped in this great tradition, it's just an ordinary team this year. But the Canadiens are playing with a lot of enthusiasm. They had a couple of thousand fans in the stands yesterday for Canada. That's a lot at this point because Canada's being extra conservative with the pandemic. And now we go with Game 7 in Toronto, and I'm intrigued. I'm very, very intrigued.
Me too, Jack, because that to me, if I was a Toronto Maple Leaf right now, I would be sweating because they were supposed to just take this, and they did for the most part during the regular season. I mean, they caught up to them a little bit, but I mean, they own that division. So in the NBA, Jack, the Bucks sweep Miami 4-0, first team out. The front court of the Bucks had a tremendous game yesterday. The 2 forwards and the center combined for 65 points and 31 rebounds, Jack. I mean, they just out-muscled Miami.
Let me tell you, I don't like to say this about a team, but I think Miami mailed it in. I just don't think the effort was there. There wasn't any sense of urgency. Like we talked this past week about certain players in the playoffs. When your team falls down a certain amount, especially 3-0, they're making their off-season plans already, certain players. They're thinking what they're going to want to do. They're thinking, oh, okay, I can leave Sunday, and go home. I can leave Monday, Tuesday. They're planning. Miami's going to have an interesting off-season because Pat Riley, no pun intended, isn't going to stand pat.
Right.
In the off-season. Is Jimmy Butler going to want to come back even? That's the question. He hasn't said anything to the contrary, but Jimmy Butler's history. When a guy is that good of a player, and this is his 3rd team. I mean, was it the 4th team? I mean, he's been with Miami. He was with the Chicago Bulls, the Minnesota Timberwolves, the Philadelphia 76ers, the Miami Heat. Is he going to want to move on again? Because Jimmy Butler's history shows when he's a bit unhappy, he wants to move on. And they're going to need, I don't want to say a roster overhaul because there's talent on that team, but they're going to have to make an impact move to be relevant, next year in the East.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%, Jack, because again, I mean, I know the Bucks, I think a lot of people have underrated the Bucks this year, thinking, it's another Milwaukee year. They're going to finish, number 1, 2, or 3, and they're going to get kicked out of the playoffs. No such luck this year. Good luck. The Nets should win it. Good luck to the Nets when they play them. So the 76ers are up 3-0 to the Wizards. I don't see the Wizards might win one game, Jack, maybe. It's pretty much all done there. The 76ers have that wrapped up, Jack.
Again, another 3-0 situation. It's a matter of pride for the Wizards. I mean, they're playing at home. I don't think teams, want to get eliminated at home. It's one of those. But then again, if they win, they go down to Philadelphia. They play again. And the one thing about Russell Westbrook, he doesn't quit. He's going to lay it all on the line. And that could sometimes be contagious for the rest of the team. Can they win a game? So far, the Sixers have outclassed them. Joel Embiid was even, I don't want to say mocking fun at the Wizards, but he was criticizing them for not double-teaming him. His attitude was, are you guys kidding me? You're just putting one guy on me? And he was kind of just like laughing about it. But listen, if they double-team Embiid, there's Harris, there's Simmons, so, I mean, any way you look at it, the Wizards don't match up. They're basically a two-person team. Westbrook and Beal have to carry them, and those guys could only take them so far.
Oh, no doubt, Jack. Even if they get 40 points apiece, doesn't mean that the Wizards are going to win. So that series is over. We got the Jazz up 2-1 on the Grizzlies. They it looks like that maybe they'll put the Grizzlies away. But the Jazz haven't until recently. I shouldn't say haven't, because last game they played really well. They didn't look like the Jazz. They're saying, Jack, that there's a little bit of dissension in the locker room. There's that I think it's Middleton. Is that right? Is that that's who I'm thinking of, right? Not Middleton.
Mitchell and Gobert.
Mitchell. Yeah, he's having problems with some of his teammates, or something like that is going on, where they're having problems. But it looks like they got it back together again, and they should beat the Grizzlies. Yeah, come on.
Well, I'll tell you, they were up 2-1. Yeah, they should win the series. What was interesting, Mike Conley, longtime Grizzly player, one of the faces of the franchise, is now with the Utah Jazz. And it was very emotional for him going back to Memphis, playing his old team. And you kind of want – I'd love to talk to players who spent a lot of years with one team and then they go back to play the team, what their reaction is going to be. Because really, you were with those guys for so long, and now you have to beat them. You were part of their success, and now you're trying to make them fail. There's got to be some mixed feelings once in a while. We were even talking a little before with hockey when Wayne Gretzky, for example, left the Edmonton Oilers, got traded to the LA Kings. His first year as an LA King, they played the Edmonton Oilers in the playoffs, and they eliminate them. And Gretzky was kind of emotional about it afterwards. He had mixed feelings. He was happy his team won the LA Kings, but he wasn't celebrating. It kind of bothered him that it came at the expense of his old team, the guys who he was very fond of. And that's the emotions that Mike Conley had, after the win yesterday. I have to make a note. A former great Utah Jazz player, Mark Eaton, tragically died in a bicycle accident. From what I hear, no vehicle was involved. I mean, more's going to come out on that. He died at the age of 64. Tragically, that's the second tragic bike accident. Sean Bradley was in a very bad one before that. Mark Eaton was an underrated player for the Jazz. I mean, one of the great shot blockers, defensive players, you could argue, in NBA history. When we think of the Jazz, we think of Karl Malone and John Stockton, but Mark Eaton was the ultimate complementary player, for a team like that. And it's a shame the Jazz never quite won an NBA title, because it not only would have been great for the legacies of Malone and Stockton, who have great legacies, but it would have elevated, the Mark Eatons of the NBA there as well.
Well, I agree with you, Jack, and so does Carlos.
Yeah.
Eaton was very underrated. So the Knicks, I don't even want to talk about them right now. I'm so disgusted with their play their last game. Looked like a high school basketball team playing a pickup game. I think, again, as I said yesterday, they've got to start being a little bit more organized and play more professional basketball than just chasing the ball around and slapping at it and taking crazy shots. They've got to set up plays better, and I think Thibodeau will go over that with them. The Nets, they're up 2-1 on Boston. Boston had a big game, 50 points from their star there. That I thought he was hurt, Jack. I thought that I'm trying to remember his name. I'm having a tough morning here so far. But
Jaylen Brown.
Brown, yeah, had the 50-point game. Yeah. But again, I think this is the writing on the wall. I think is the Nets should win this, and they'll probably push on to play the Bucks, Jack.
Yeah. I mean, it's hard to imagine the Celtics winning 3 of the next 4. It's just hard, especially imagine the Celtics if they tie the series up 2 games apiece. You got to believe there's going to be a big urgency with the Nets that they're not going to mess this up. They're not going to let it, slip away. Season's a disaster for the Nets. If they somehow lost to the Celtics, it's not going to happen. It's not a disaster for the Knicks. But I will say this. If the Knicks lose to the Hawks in a very competitive, tight 7-game series, the year's a success. I don't think a playoff loss to the Hawks in a tough, hard, long series diminishes the Knicks season at all. But if they lose the next couple of games and they play the way they've been playing, and Julius Randle goes flat like he's been for most of the last 3 games outside of maybe one half of the second game, that's really going to put a little bit of a damp on the season. And I can't imagine the Knicks coming back with exactly the same team. They were 41-31. That record exceeded everyone's expectations. Okay, everyone.
I agree. Carlos brings up the point that Randall was used too much during the season. And Carlos, Will Chamberlain played during his career, and I think he missed in one season, he missed 5 minutes or something ridiculous. Listen, basketball is I don't think the athletes today are supposed to be in better shape than the athletes of yesterday. And I don't want to hear about resting players anymore. I'm so tired of that. It's ridiculous. But if that's all it takes to make Randall not play well in the playoffs, then he's not as good as I thought he was. That's all I got to say to that.
He fooled me during the season. I had to relent when I didn't think he was as good as you were making him out to be. And then I thought, wow, what a season he's having. And I had to relent. He's definitely a strong all-star caliber player, going forward. And he was like another Mari Stoudemire to me, the way he played this season. But listen, Randall is the leader. The team has been the leader team throughout the season. But he's disappeared. It's like the Knicks have no leadership on the court. And R.J. Barrett is so inconsistent. When he's good, he's very good. Yeah, he's an excellent player. But he's not consistent. And listen, I don't want to hear about Quickly already. To me, he should be a trade chip. I know he can have good games now and then. There's a certain potential, but he's not a good shooting guard. He's not a point guard. Got to kind of find a role for him. When a Grizzly veteran like Derrick Rose has to come in and, take control of the situation, it doesn't bode down well for the future. You wonder whether the Knicks have maxed out. You know, is this as good as they can possibly be? And when we get to next year, we're going to think, wow, it can only get worse rather than better. I just don't know. Let's see what goes on the rest of the series.
Well, the only thing I can say, Jack, is that, I told you that when Westbrook was available, and he may not have brought him to the championship, but I'm telling you right now, he would have been a nice bridge to the next point.
Mac, the Wizards are down 3-0 with Westbrook. So I don't want to hear it. The Knicks would be down 2-1 with Westbrook.
I don't believe that, Jack.
Anyway, it would not have made it.
I think it would.
Yeah.
I think.
Listen, the Knicks had a good season. They would not have had a better season with Westbrook. You look at Westbrook's history with the other teams. He hasn't elevated his teams for the most part, even though this year you can argue, they got the 8th seed ultimately, and Westbrook did contribute a lot to that. But listen, they've been no match for the Sixers in the playoffs, the Wizards.
No, but I think they would have beat Atlanta. Backstage right now, Jack, we got one of my favorite weekly guests coming in. He's Robert Butler, folks, from Sportscope on almost all media. Just look up Sportscope, and you'll find him there. He does a great job over there, and we love having him in every Sunday with us on our This Week in Sports. So let's bring him aboard and see if I can, again, I know he's in here somewhere. There he is. Let's bring Robert with his banner up and see how he's doing today.
Hey, good morning, guys.
How you doing, Robert? Good to see you.
I'm good. We're 16 weeks away from opening Sunday in the NFL. 16 weeks, guys. It'll be here before you know it.
Yes. Yes, it will.
It makes you think of how irrelevant the Olympics have become, because the Olympics would have came and gone by the time the NFL season begins, but I don't hear anyone saying, oh, we're X amount of weeks away till the Olympics. I think that's something like July 23rd, the Olympics.
Oh, okay.
6 weeks
that's my
before
birthday,
the NFL season.
Yeah.
On your birthday. Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll be a man. I'll be
That's
40
how you'll
like Mike
celebrate.
Gundy.
I'm sure you're looking forward to the games.
So Robert, we're covering it at what we were covering. I thought would segue into having you on to one of the topics. Yeah. We're talking about the NBA and the playoffs, and in the East, we pretty much know that it's either going to be the Sixers, Nets, or Bucks. There's no question about that. One of those three teams. The West has a big question mark, and the Lakers, because of injuries and because of whatever they were doing over there, fell to the 7th seed. But can you make a case that the Lakers are the favorite to win the West?
Yeah, I was looking at that today. According to the odds books, they're still the favorite, but I would disagree with that. Anthony Davis has a knee sprain. He's questionable. He claims he's going to play today. I think Phoenix will win today. I know that Chris Paul's banged up. I would say that the route plus his injury plus LeBron not being 100%, I would give the edge to Utah with Donovan Mitchell coming back. He had, 29 points the other night. They're a 2-1 lead over Memphis. Got home court advantage back. I would give the slight edge to Utah with the healthy younger Utah team as a whole. I think this series goes 6 games, possibly 7. Then they got to play Denver, talking about the Lakers. So I would not call them the favorite right now. That was my whole issue with them. I mean, you got injury concerns, and they're the most talented. But
wait. You said they have to play Denver. Denver and Portland are 2 games apiece, and you're already projecting Denver to win the series. Man, I would hate if you were a political analyst on election night. You would make a projection when they're going neck and neck. You would project a winner.
They'll play the winner. They'll play at Portland or at Denver.
You said Denver. You said Denver. A lot of us assumed early in the year that Denver,
Either way, Lakers will be playing on the road. They will not. They're the 7th seed. Both of those, they will play those teams next. So it's an uphill battle for the Lakers. I don't know why everybody thinks that it's just going to be a walk in the park. It's not easy going on the road. No, only 6th seed. There was a 1-6 seed to actually win the finals, and that was Houston in 1994, guys. No 7 seeds never won the whole thing. So you got to keep history in there's a reason why. It's a tough role.
Well, Robert. I mean, I understand that. You got to play. They're going to have to play away. But honestly, and I don't know how bad that Davis is hurt, or they could be playing possum with us. They could be doing a lot of things. But if I was to take right now, put Utah against the Lakers in a 7-game series, Lakers may not win every game, but I think they beat Utah. And and the reason why I say that is because you have 2 of the top 5 players probably in basketball on one team, and they got some nice pieces around them. Utah is a good team. If they're playing as a team, they're a good team. But, I mean, you would think with the record they had this year that they would go through this first round and cruise, and they're not. They're having a little problem over there. In fact, there's in-house fighting going on right now over there from what I read.
Yeah, well, Mitchell's been injured. If Mitchell doesn't get injured a few weeks ago, they are by far the number 1 seed. Yeah, that is correct. It would be a tough series for them to play right now. Probably give the edge to the Lakers, but the Lakers got a tough road to go before they get there. They got to get past Phoenix, and then they got to go on the road, either to Portland or Denver, to get there. And Utah, I think Utah probably sail the rest of the way. They're not going to sweep, but you got to look at the youth. You got to look at Anthony Davis has been injured every year just about.
Yeah.
And it was a miracle. I mean, the bubble thing kind of saved them. They were playing great, but, they had a few months off, and then they didn't have to do any traveling.
Yeah.
And LeBron's like 35, 36 years old, guys. I mean, this is not not 32-year-old LeBron just can play 48 minutes.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with a lot of what you're saying there.
Yeah.
I just think the West is wide open. I think the Phoenix Suns, I think Denver could win this thing. I mean, I really don't know who's going to win this. That's the thing that's crazy to me, because normally the West, you pretty much know the Clippers could come up back and win. If they catch fire, they could win this thing. I mean, they got the players that can do it.
Yeah. The Clippers need to trust Rondo more. They don't finish games well, but maybe they had epiphany. I don't know.
If Jamal Murray didn't get injured, I would think Denver's chances would be greatly increased. I don't look at them that seriously. I don't look at Portland that seriously. I don't look at the Mavericks that seriously as winning the NBA championship, even though they might beat the Clippers. I think Luka can only carry them so far. But, and the Lakers, I agree with Rob, on yet a lock to get by Phoenix. If they lose today, then it's best 2 out of 3. But, it just looks to me it comes down between the 2 LA teams in Utah, ultimately there. If you want to make a big 3, just like you do in the East, the Nets, Sixers, and Bucks. But I don't consider the Bucks quite on the level of the Nets or Sixers there. So it's intriguing how it's going to wind up. But, there was in 1986, there was an 8th seed, Rob. The Houston Rockets, when they upset the Lakers, when the Lakers were number 1 seed, they beat them in 5 games on a crazy shot in the 5th game on the decider. But I agree with you. It's very rare where a seed that low is going to make the finals.
Or and that team was beat by the Boston Celtics. So
very true. So let's turn to football. In a couple, let's do pro football first, right? Yeah. The Eagles, and I've had a lot of talks with a lot of people. We even debated this. I talked to Pags about this.
Pags, yeah.
I'm still not convinced that Hurst is the franchise quarterback for the Eagles. We had a small sample of him. He played okay. They didn't win the games, but he played okay. He did what he had to do to move the team, whether it was running or not. They pick up a young Devontae Smith who should be good for him. But, I mean, we don't have a big enough sample to me. And I was surprised, Robert, that the Eagles did not either pick up a better veteran than Flacco or even draft a quarterback to compete with Hurst. People say I'm crazy. They say, well, you can't do that to that young kid. I don't agree with that. I think that you should do that to that young kid to bring out the best in him. Because if you just say, here's the keys to the car, and you don't know how he drives, you're taking a big chance with your team this year and the future.
Yeah. I mean, and I was looking at the team he's got. If they don't trade Zach Ertz, they still got him, Dallas Goddard at tight end. That's a young quarterback's best friend. Miles Sanders. What is that? Fulgham, the other receiver. He had some flash last year. Jalen Rager. They're going to have, and the offensive line coming back, they'll have a decent team next year offensively. My fear is, you can bring this up with Jamie later on, is he's good enough at a very pretty good schedule there to make the playoffs for them to keep him. And then you see who he really is as time goes on. I'm not a Jalen Hurts guy. He went in the second round for a reason. He transferred out of Alabama because basically Tua beat him out. He looked good early on. He peaked early at Alabama and beat out their other starting quarterback. But as time went on, he could not make his second read. And if you look at the Dallas game last year, he had 2 interceptions. He was getting figured out at the end of last year. He looked good for about 2 games for Arizona and New Orleans. That was the very first game. They upset the Saints last year, and now people are sold on him. I don't know how much they're really sold on him. My thing is, if they go above 500 and make a wild card, people are going to think they got a franchise quarterback and not draft another one. So I would grade him. I would look very closely at his every single throw this year because I'm not sold on him. I think he'll be good enough to win a few games. They're over and under 6.5. So and remember, we got 17 games this year.
Yeah.
They're going to be kind of stuck in limbo is what I'm afraid of if I'm an Eagles fan.
So you're talking like Jack felt about Sam Darnold that he might be good enough to get you to 6-10 or 7-9 when the 16-game season was there.
No. Listen, guys, I'm comparing a little bit the situation of Jalen Hurts to Geno Smith when he was a Jet quarterback. Sometimes you got to play a guy to have an answer. Geno Smith's first year with the Jets, they went 8-8, and I didn't know whether he should be their starting quarterback going forward. He didn't give me an answer, even though it was a full season, but he gave me an answer the following year. He wasn't the guy. The only way you're going to know what Jalen Hurts is playing him. That's the only way you're going to know, and we'll see how he develops, how he comes along. He does have a major pedigree in college, Rob. You were saying, well, he was this, he was that. But he was successful. But one thing you can't argue, he was very, very successful. Very successful, and he did show good leadership qualities. And listen, he did play better than Carson Wentz. When he got in last year, let's agree he was adequate, at least coming in. And he came in a tough situation, but the Eagle team did improve with him in there. So let's basically see what's what. Geno Smith, I think, now is the backup to Russell Wilson with the Seattle Seahawks.
Really?
Yeah, Jay. My prediction this time next year, he'll be a backup somewhere. I think we'll probably know. Probably 9 or 10 games into the season, people will have a verdict on Jalen Hurts, and they'll probably say this guy's probably a backup, and this team probably will pick in the top 5 next year in the NFL draft behind Houston. And who else knows will be finished other than that, but that's my prediction.
Hey, listen, nothing against the kid. I hope he does great. I really do.
Of course.
Yeah, I mean, I hope he takes the reins
in the league if he does great.
And runs with it, definitely. I agree with that 100%. Let's talk about college football for a second. I mean, that's coming up too. We forget about college football.
15 weeks, if you want to start counting the weeks.
Yes. so Robert, the NFL, I mean, the college championship, the way it's set up, and the way they pick number, where they're ranked, I swear to God, I wish the computers were doing it again. Because to me, it's just as bad, if not worse. I mean, you got people on this committee who put a team in that only played 4 or 6 games. That's ridiculous. There's no way Ohio State should have got into the national championship. And I don't care how good a team they have. You had teams playing 12 games, and they didn't get in, even though they only had 1 loss or whatever the case may be. But we already know who's pretty much going to be there, right? We already know that Alabama's going to be there. Clemson, even without Trevor Lawrence, almost beat Notre Dame, who was supposedly in the top 4. Ohio State's going to be there. And you're probably going to have maybe another SEC team. Maybe Oklahoma gets in. One of those might get in. But we already know. So the interest to me is going to start fading pretty quick here if this continues. And I don't know if the answer is to put in 8 teams and maybe have a representative of every major conference play a playoff thing to like the NFL does. I'm not sure what the answer is. In fact, I think the answer is to redo the whole college NCAA league itself, but they wouldn't do that. So there's got to be some way to give some of these teams a shot at getting to the national championship and bringing up more interest in this, because I fear, I'm telling you right now, guys, believe me, if this continues another couple of years, it's not going to be good for anybody else except for the fans of the 4 teams. That's going to be it. Something has to be done, Robert. What do you think the answer is?
Right. The South, and then whoever's a fan of Ohio State. Yeah, I totally agree with that. Only thing I do not agree in awarding mediocrity. And the teams past 4, a lot of them are mediocre teams. I think they would have got slaughtered anyways. We got excused last year. It was COVID. We was lucky to have a season. My idea would be to start eliminating scholarships. Say, for instance, Alabama wins a national championship, lose 7 scholarships. The runner-up loses 6. The other 2 teams in the playoffs, they lose 5 the next year. They have to eliminate 5 scholarships. Now, we've got the transfer rule, guys. We've got marketing where players can utilize their likeness. So I like all that stuff for the players. But you start eliminating scholarships, Alabama, it's going to be harder for Alabama and Clemson and Ohio State and another SEC school to just continue to dominate each year. Somebody's going to feast off that. And you've got to create more parity. It is such a regional sport. A lot of the West Coast teams are getting left out. Well, of course, we take it more serious down here. But that's the only thing I can think of. I do not agree with Pickles there. I mean, do not expand it. Do not award. We don't want it to be like college basketball, just watered down tea at the end of the meal. No bleeping way. Eliminate scholarships. Let other teams have an opportunity to bring in those players, so teams like Alabama can't stack players.
Well, I don't know if you could legally do that, Robert. I mean, how can you tell one school that they can't have as many scholarships as somebody else? I don't know if that would even be legal. All I'm saying is,
well, a lot of stuff I didn't think would be legal, but look at where we're at. I didn't think players could capitalize on likeness.
Well, Robert, I'm saying under the equal rights, I don't think you could do that to a school, university. I mean, I don't know. Maybe you could, but I don't think
it's been discussed in higher circles.
So why not? You're saying reward a mediocrity. Who's to say that, say, a team from some conference that's in a number 1 division doesn't come up and beats, say, a Clemson or something in that one game? I mean, all it is for one game, Robert, and they're not playing the best out of 5. Why couldn't you at least bring some kind of excitement about an underdog? Everybody loves the underdogs, right? Everybody wants to see somebody beat Alabama. Why not have the winner of each major conference play in a playoff and then go to somewhat what the NFL does? You go to a Super Bowl. That's your championship. I don't know any other way that a committee who is going to rate who's the best without seeing them play everybody. I don't know how you cannot, how they would pick somebody else. I think it has to be forced on. It would make college more popular during the playoffs. It would make these schools more popular because they're in the playoffs, which would make more players from high school want to go there to be on TV, to be in the playoffs. I think it would make more sense than punishing teams.
Well, another thing that's been thrown out there is these teams like Alabama and everybody, they do not like to play away and home games. They like to play these neutral site games to start the season. I'd rather take away some of those cupcake games and make them more competitive. Ohio State and Alabama home and away each year. Spread that out. Basically have a reason for another argument to be made for another team to come up to play in that by giving these powerhouse teams more difficulty getting there and scheduling. So that's something else that could be taught. That's been talked about for a few years now. And I think Saban, if he really pushed his ego, I think he would do it. I know he did it about 8 or 9 years ago with Penn State. They did a home and away.
Yeah.
But something like that to spread out the regular season, have more competitive games early, that could be something that could be used.
Plus, we forget these are educational institutions, and we never talk about college and this.
I knew that argument was coming.
I mean, listen, who gives a darn? Just get the top 64 and do an NCAA format. It just make this season one big playoff thing for the most part. And if you lose, you're out of the playoffs. Do 128 teams, okay, instead of 64. And dwindle it down. You lose one game in that mini tournament, you can't be a national champion, but you can still fulfill your schedule with the other games. And this way you'll get your revenue and maybe set a couple of bowl games on the side. But do it in an NCAA format, perhaps, with a lot of teams, and you play X amount of weeks. Because we're going to argue about this forever. I mean, it's
yeah. Now remember, scholarships were way more now than they've been eliminated to 25 per year. It used to be, I think, twice that amount. Bear Bryant was stacking teams for Alabama back in the day. So the scholarship thing is not too far-fetched.
Rob, why can't they give as many scholarships as they want? Why should they have to cap them? If the schools want to give scholarships, let them give them. Students are going to go to any school that's appealing to them, okay? And it doesn't necessarily have to be a big-name school. A school gets its rep at some point. Like, whoever heard of Gonzaga before they started to become good in basketball? Who would want to go there? Okay, the big name schools, for example, would be, USC, Penn State, but there's so many alternatives. A student might just like to go wherever the heck he wants, but let him just give as many scholarships as they want. I mean, I don't see why scholarships have to be capped.
Well, it used to be, you want to keep one team from just totally dominating. And there's always going to be organizations and programs that work harder. They'll find a loophole. Nick Saban will find a loophole. So, okay, well, we got a good marketing program. We're not going to give you zero scholarship, but we have a car lot that was going to pay you the amount a month. So it's just food for thought, but it's already been used. And there's a lot of schools out there, Jack, that want these players as well. The Vanderbilt, Tennessee, Mississippi, there's plenty of schools. Northwestern's got a pretty good football program now. Yeah. They're getting more scholarship players.
And listen, Indiana and Cincinnati is starting to get good football programs. And can
Indiana's
you imagine someone from the Midwest? They might want to go to Cincinnati, or someone who's around the Indiana area. They might find it appealing to be closer to home. And that's how you build the programs up. If they have unlimited scholarships, maybe they can start building a serious program.
The 5-star kid from Indiana would stay at home. That would be my point, Jack. He would not move to Alabama to be on national TV. He would stay at home.
What is wrong with that?
Well, no, you're making my point.
That's what
a lot of these big 5-star guys will move away from those towns and go play at Auburn. I read this stuff every week, guys. These guys don't just recruit Florida and Alabama; they recruit nationally.
Of course they do. Of course they do. But of course, if you're going to be in a national championship and you want to play football, you're going to one of those 4 schools, and that's
right.
That's just the way it is. So baseball, real quick, Robert.
Yeah.
Next agreement, they're going to propose a salary cap and strike or close the locker rooms about it if they don't?
I don't think they'll put a salary cap. I wish they would. Remember, it was shot down in '94 when we missed the we missed the World Series that year. I don't think they will. But I will say this. I was reading your question. I think they care about the younger viewers, but I think they're very slow. There's so much fear in baseball. Everything is tested on the minor league system. You've got a 15 pitch clock in the lower, I think it's like AA. You have eliminating the shifts in single A West. They're afraid the world is going to burn up. We're going to slide into the sun if all these changes are made in Major League Baseball. I mean, they are so scared. The NFL guys, they will change the overtime rule one off season. They will change challenging pass interference one off season. They didn't like it. They changed it back. I don't see what the big fear is in Major League Baseball right now. It's just the culture.
Yes, Robert. I was just going to say that. What I meant about younger fans is that there's really not programs in neighborhoods like other sports do for the kids. There's really not a reach out to the younger generation in baseball. It's more concerned towards the adults my age and Jack's age and your age. You really don't see them going to the neighborhoods like the NFL, the NBA, and setting up camps like they do in the other sports. And this is what I meant by baseball, kind of not paying attention to the younger generation as much, and I think it's a big mistake.
Well, part of that is what I was saying, though, like TikTok, for instance. The videos are very quick. They're 30-second. We have the younger generations, because of technology, have a lower attention span. So they want the game to have more action. They want it to be quicker. They want more sense of urgency in baseball. And if you start seeing that surge, you're going to have that money come in. And people's going to say, you know what, maybe we need to build more baseball fields in the inner city. But, that's been a problem since I was a kid in the 90s and 80s here. Even here in Nashville, we don't have enough fields.
I agree with that 100%. I think they're doing a poor job. Well, Robert, we're going to let you go. Thanks for coming in as you do every week. Robert Butler with Sports Scope does a great job over there. And you have a great day, Robert. And we'll see you next Sunday.
Okay, guys, 16 weeks away from NFL Week 1.
It sure is.
See ya.
So we're good. So we have waiting for us backstage, and we're going to get to them right after this. We have Jim Jeffcoat, the one and only two-time Super Bowl champion for the Dallas Cowboys. He can hear us. We can't hear him right now. So that's the advantage of being backstage, Jack. You can watch everything. You can say whatever you want, and we can't hear a darn thing you're saying. So he could be calling us every name in the book right now. We won't even know.
Yeah, but if they catch you on a hot mic, Mac, you're fired. You say the wrong thing in this day and age. You could just innocently vent about something, and you got to be on guard at all times.
Yes. So, folks, we're going to take a quick break, and on the other side, we will have our friend and doing a little business with the man, Jim Jeffcoat, will be on right after these messages. So stick with us.
If you served honorably in our nation's armed forces and you're looking for a way to continue serving your fellow veterans in your community, then join AMVETS. Each year, AMVETS members volunteer millions of hours at VA healthcare facilities from coast to coast, helping to improve the lives of their fellow veterans through the VA Voluntary Services Program. AMVETS posts and departments also participate in a wide variety of community service projects, ranging from Americanism in our schools to supporting the Special Olympics and Boy Scouts of America. If you no longer wear the uniform today, you can still serve through the AMVETS by joining today at amvets.org.
When you hear the word asthma, you probably think of shortness of breath, coughing, or inhalers. Lots of things can trigger asthma, but the fact is that asthma doesn't just attack, it can kill. But with proper medical management, asthma is controllable. If you experience shortness of breath, wheezing, tightness in your chest, or persistent nighttime coughing, you may have asthma. See your doctor and get the facts. You'll breathe easier. For more information, call 211 Infoline. A message from the Connecticut Department of Public Health, keeping Connecticut healthy.
If you talk and they will hear you every single time.
Oh, we're getting killed.
Yeah, well, Kyle's not here.
How come?
Kicked off the team. Didn't Tim tell you? Kyle and some other kids got caught drinking beer in the park a couple of nights ago.
Really?
Yeah. Zero tolerance. He's out for the season.
Come on, it's a first offense, right?
That we know of. But why should that matter? He knew not to drink. I made it clear to Matt, that's what we expect from him. What have you said to Tim?
Nothing really. You know, a lot of kids try it at this age, so.
Yeah, well, a lot of kids don't try it too. I'm not saying that Matt's going to be this perfect kid, but if I don't tell him what we expect and why he shouldn't drink, how's he going to know?
You think kids that age really listen?
They never admit it, Bill, but they hear more than you think.
Talk. They hear you.
For more information about talking with kids about underage drinking, visit underagedrinking.samhsa.gov.
Good morning. You're listening to the Mac and Jack Sports Show on Northeast Streaming Sports.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome back to the Mac and Jack Sports Show on live Wednesday through Sunday, 8 to 10 a.m. I'm your host, Mac, with your co-host, legendary boxing writer, Jack Hirsch. And, folks, we got a great surprise for you today. Backstage right now, ready to come on and bless our studio here is two-time Super Bowl champion of the Dallas Cowboys, nominee to the Hall of Fame. I mean, this man had an incredible career with the Cowboys, also played for the Buffalo Bills. So let's bring him on right now. Jim Jeffcoat. How you doing today, Jim?
I'm doing great. Good morning. Hey, I got a quick question before we start. Jack, the best middleweight ever?
Probably Harry Greb, great middleweight of the 1920s. I mean, he fought like 45 times in 1 year. Imagine that, and won all his fights. Wow. So I go Harry Greb. Who do you think?
Ooh, I don't know anything about Harry, but there was Hagler. You know, you gotta look at Thomas Hearns too, right?
No, there's a middleweight, not Tommy Hearns, but Hagler's a popular choice. Carlos Monzon. Some people say Sugar Ray Robinson.
Sugar Ray a middleweight, wouldn't you?
Sugar Ray, yeah. Sugar Ray won it 5 times, but that means he had to lose it a number of times as well. People don't consider that. All those guys bragging, I was a 5-time champion. They don't talk about all the times they lost the title. Yeah, as well. But listen, I got in trouble with Mac because one of your teammates was, took up boxing. You know who I'm referring to, Too Tall Jones?
Oh, Too Tall? Yeah. But he retired undefeated from boxing. They always remember that.
Yeah, but you didn't see the last round of his career.
I saw it.
Yeah, the little Mexican just knocked him flat. Too Tall, listen, great. Right. I mean, listen, there's a difference in strength. I mean, in sports. I mean, boxers couldn't tackle the most powerful guys. I mean, take Tyson Fury, any big heavyweight. You can't make them an offensive lineman or defensive end. Do you think it's possible you could take an athlete in another sport? Let's say a Wilt Chamberlain, for example, phenomenal athlete, big guy. Do you think you could turn him into a defensive line? He could have been turned into a defensive lineman. Those big, long hands could have given the quarterback a little problem. People would have said,
The height would have been an issue. And the reason is because you got too many, and offensive linemen are going to attack you at your lower body. So you have to be leverage. It's all leverage in football, as you already know that. And that's the thing. The taller guys struggle. Ed Jones was a phenom from the standpoint of being 6'9" and to do the things that he can do. But very few defensive linemen over 6'7". Art Still was another one, but you see it far and few between at that height. They're usually around the medium height is around 6'5", some 6'6". Then there were good ones, but the taller you get, the more legs areas that you have to attack. And
right.
But
right. So Jack, Byron Williams comes on, our wide receiver for the Giants, once a week, every Friday. And he's pretty good friends. He just got done talking to Too Tall Jones 2 days prior to our last show.
Really? Yeah.
And Jack decided to say that Too Tall Jones was not a good boxer. So Byron is going to inform Too Tall Jones of what Jack said. And Byron has promised to try to get Too Tall Jones into a kind of talk to Jack. And, of course, Jack quickly backpedaled. And, so we'll see what happens Friday, Jim, that maybe we'll see if Jack can stand his ground against Too Tall Jones and say what he said.
I'm gonna call Ed and talk to him about it, and we'll see what happens with Jack and Ed.
Listen, Too Tall, you know what he got out of his boxing career at the end? You know, he was a grand marshal for the International Boxing Hall of Fame in Canastota. And I was venting about that. What was Too Tall doing as the grand marshal on Hall of Fame weekend? Because he had 6 fights. He had a great manager. They tried to build him. Look, he did well. You know, the time he was in there boxing, he did what he could do, you know, in that sense. But my point is, big, powerful guys might not be able to punch a lick in the boxing ring. And great punches in boxing, you know, might not have any real strength in another sport.
You make a good point. But when you box, I practice boxing. It is all, you have to relax. Because you have to throw a punch. You can't throw it in grimace. You have to relax everything, and that's where you get your quickness from and your strength, really. And it's just like I'm a black belt in Taekwondo. The more relaxed you are, the quicker your kicks are, the quicker your punches are. And it's the same thing in boxing. The great boxers, the Muhammad Ali's, the Joe Frazier's, they were all quick, but they never got tense. They fought and they kept relaxed as they tensed, and that's why they were so great. Even Mike Tyson at his prime was a guy that he'd say he'd kill you, but he relaxed when he hit you, and that's what knocked you out. Well, a lot of times it was when he threw the punch, he'd hit you with that elbow. So,
So, did you see Too Tall box? Did you get to go to his fight? Because I heard some of your teammates.
I was still in college when he boxed, and he was out of boxing by the time I got in the NFL. And I did not, but I saw video of it and things of that nature. And I did see the fight.
You know, you mentioned, you know, another defensive end, Ernie the Big Cat Ladd. He took a year off to become a wrestler in the WWF, it was called at the time. And his timing wasn't good, Ernie Ladd, because that was the 1 year the Chiefs won the Super Bowl. The 1 year he took off. Not good timing. Then he came back the following year. So.
Yeah, listen, everybody tries, everybody thinks they can do everything. And you know, there's certain talent to boxing. There's a skill. It's like a martial art in a way. And football is a totally different animal. It's a controlled anger. You've got to be going 100 miles a minute every play, where in boxing, you can kind of rest if you're smart and know how to do it. You can take those rests. You know what I mean, Jim?
Football is a visual sport. You see things. And the people that are successful in that, obviously in pro football, they have vision. They see things. They don't just see ahead. They see to their peripheral vision too.
Right. This is another great point. So, Jim, we're going to have you on, and what we're going to break down. We had you on for this segment here. We'll bring you back on, and hopefully, God willing, and the river don't rise, Jim will join us every Sunday when we start getting into the football season, where we actually start updating football and really taking a look at football, and I'm excited about that coming. So, Jim, we're going to take the Jets, and what's interesting to me about the Jets, and I was super hyped you decided to come on for this breakdown. They remind me, and you went through it as a Dallas Cowboy, as they mirror the Dallas Cowboys in a lot more ways than people think. Mm-hmm. They're going through a rebuild based off a lot of a trade that happened with Jamal. I mean, he went to Seattle, right? And Herschel Walker back when the Dallas went through the rebuild. He got traded to Minnesota. Minnesota thought they were going to win now. They needed Herschel Walker to do that. And Dallas got a boatload of picks who they ended up getting Troy Aikman and Emmitt Smith and Michael Irvin. And it's kind of the same here. I mean, they trade away a great defensive safety. And for that, they get a lot of draft picks where they get their quarterback, they get a running back, they get a wide receiver, they got a brand new coach who, by all accounts, and we'll talk about it a little bit more in a minute, he's a great communicator, built a great defense in San Francisco. So it looks to me, and of course it's not exact, but it does mirror the Cowboys a little bit if you think about it.
Yes, and I agree with you, and certainly I looked at that. But here's the thing that I noticed about the Jets. First of all, they were only out of 32 teams. They didn't have a 1,000-yard receiver, and they didn't have a 1,000-yard runner. So that tells me something is not right. And like you said, there is a rebuilding process that's going through. Now, if I was them, the reason that the Cowboys became successful, obviously, they had Troy Aikman and they got Emmitt Smith and guys like that from the Herschel Walker trade. But the reason they became successful is offensive line.
Good point.
Yeah, the offensive line was one of the best ever, and you can see that the Larry Allens, the Eric Williams, the Mark Stepnowski's, the Kevin Gogans, and that's where the success came. And on defense, people don't realize is that when we became successful, we were playing less plays. We were playing less plays per game, and we controlled the game. Now, in the NFL today, it's totally different. It's harder because it's more open up and the rules have changed. But that's the thing. You see the teams that are successful, Tampa Bay, they can say Tampa Bay's defense played well against Kansas City. They controlled there, and they took series away from them. They didn't have as many opportunities to score because they got 3 and outs. That's what New York, but New York is in a unique situation. You got Miami that's up and coming. Buffalo is going to be really good. And then you got, obviously, New England is scary because you got one of the greatest coaches ever coaching them, and you got some players. And then Cam Newton will be that second year in that, that organization, and that's going to help him. So these things that you say, but the Jets are going to be better. We know that. It's difficult in that, obviously in that division because of the teams that are in that division, and it's difficult because if I looked at their first 5 games, that's tough. If they win 1 or 2 of them, they're doing really well.
I agree with that too, Jim. What's interesting to me, and I think the biggest move the Jets made was, of course, getting rid of Adam Gase. Yeah, he lost that locker room. But you picked up a coach from all accounts that everyone he's coached with and every player he coached for say he's a great communicator.
Yes.
And I think in the NFL, especially today, you have to be able to – you can't just come in and try to harass players and discipline them like you used to maybe way back. You have to be able to communicate your message and get them involved in the game. So, I mean, if you look at the different style coaches, right, I put them in 3 different classes, Jim. You got people like Bill Parcells, who's kind of a hard ass, right? But he fools around behind the scenes. I mean, he can be personable with the players, but come time game, he's all business. He don't want to hear nothing. Yes. Then you got somebody like Bill Belichick, who to me is a lot like Tom Landry, all business. He ain't gonna. He's not gonna criticize you too much. He's not gonna pick you up and say great game. He's all business. This is the way it's done. You do it this way if you want to keep your job. And then you got a coach, say Jim, like sort of a Pete Carroll, who's a player's coach, and they love to play for this because he's so into his players when they're on the team with him. So I think there's good and bad in all. And I think from what I read and what I've taught, what I've seen on TV and in sports, that Saul seems like he's intense, but he's really player friendly and he communicates with the players.
See, here's the thing I think about him, Robert, and I've met Robert before, is that as we know about what market he's in, the New York market is a tough. It could chew you up and spit you out like that. And we all know that market. And he's going to have to deal with that market, and his players have to deal with that market because the expectations are different. And you say, how can you say that? But the expectations are different in New York as opposed to Cincinnati. Right. If he's not successful in 2 to 3 years, I mean, he'll be out the door. That's just the reality of it because it's a hard market, and it's the expectations to be successful. You look at the greatest example is what's happened with New York Knicks with Tom Thibodeau. Thibodeau was that kind of guy that could handle the New York market. And even though, they had some struggles against Atlanta in this series, I mean, that's a team that's on the rise. And that's the same thing Robert can learn from what Thibodeau did. Is he the same person as Thibodeau, just like you said? No, he's not. But he has to put those pieces. He's got to find veterans that understand what he wants. He's got to find players, younger players, that can fit into what you said. In the draft, they got great draft picks. They got Zach Wilson, and it's going to be tough. we had Troy Aikman, and Troy Aikman missed some of the first year he played from injuries because we didn't have the people around him yet. You know, Michael Irvin was hurt and things of that nature. And then we didn't have a running game. And these things all come together. And that's the thing you got to realize is that it's still going to be tough and people are not going to give him the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah, but Jim, Max comparing the Jets a little bit to the Dallas Cowboys as they were turning the corner with the Herschel Walker deal, something you would know quite a bit about, obviously. But I don't fully agree. If you take the Jets' third overall selection in the draft, Elijah Moore from Ole Miss, very speedy, so on, can you really compare him to Michael Irvin, who was undoubtedly one of the best players in the country coming out of college? And I'm not ready to make that comparison yet. Maybe you could say Zach Wilson, Troy Aikman are somewhat similar as far as status, you know, when Troy Aikman came into the NFL. Yeah.
That's a great point you make, Jack, is that you got to realize Michael Irvin was a different guy. You heard about the off-field things, but you didn't know about Michael Irvin on the field and in the locker room. Michael Irvin was extremely competitive. I mean, ultra competitive. You'd go out there, I go in there, I work out at 5 o'clock in the morning. Michael might have been out all night, but he was in there at 5 o'clock working out. And he was training. Then he'd come back in the afternoons and train again. So, you know, a lot similar to what Joe Namath was. A guy that everybody talks about him, you know, Broadway Joe. But Michael got work done. Plus, Michael might have been one of the greatest teammates ever. He might have been. And you say, what? Can you say that? He was a tremendous motivator to the team. And he loved Jimmy Johnson. He loved Jimmy Johnson. I mean, this guy was very charismatic, and he pushed for the team. He pulled for it. He would do anything to help the team.
So, you know, we joke a little about Michael Irvin. Yeah, I mean, Max joked with Too Tall Jones, but I got to tell you a very quick Michael Irvin story. Mac will probably crack up. Where it didn't endear Michael Irvin to me. I'm out in Las Vegas. We're having a big banquet for the Boxing Writers Association of America, and it's slow that year. Sergio Martinez is a fight of the year, and I want to add a little pizzazz to it. Michael Irvin is there doing a radio show, and I meet him in the press room of the boxing, you know, event, and I'm telling him about the banquet, giving him my card. He takes it and says, "Yeah, I'll be there." And I said, "He's not calling me up to be there, you know, to help present the awards." So Michael Irvin was kind of, you know, but as a player, wow, you know, one of the great underrated receivers of all time. I mean, we talk about the Jerry Rices and so on. But Michael Irvin is just a gentle step behind as far as I'm concerned.
I would agree. I agree. You know, you've had some great receivers in the history of the NFL. But he is one of those guys that has been very successful, and there's a reason behind him. The reason I like Michael first, I've known him forever, and we've been friends forever, is because when my children were young, he'd sit in the locker room and wrestle with them and play with them. And that was something that was endearing to me because he had no reason to. And they'd be wrestling, they'd be chasing each other around and teasing each other, and that's the way it was. I mean, that's the kind of personality it is. If he knows you and he trusts you, he's a friend for life.
That's cool. That's excellent. So, Jim, when you lived through it, right? You replaced a very good defensive end, Harvey Martin. You played with Too Tall Jones. You played with some of the, to me, one of the best defensive line units in the history of football. And that's not talked about a lot when it comes to the Dallas Cowboys. But when the rebuild happened, right? You're there with Tom Landry, a legendary coach, one of the greatest coaches of all time. He leaves, and here comes a college coach in, Jimmy Johnson, you know, that won a national title, but still a college coach. What were you thinking when this happened? I mean, you're in the locker room, this whole thing is changing, and you've already been playing, and you know it's a new coach with new ideas, and you don't know what's going to happen, what direction you're going in. What did you think about during that time, if I can take it back?
I'll tell you a story, and I'm not clairvoyant. A year before that happened, Jimmy Johnson, for whatever reason, I don't remember the reason, came to the Cowboys and was going through the locker room. And I said to him, I said, hey, that's the next coach of the Dallas Cowboys. And he looked at me. He didn't know me. I didn't know him. And he started laughing. So when he came, he said, how could you know I was going to take over to be the coach? I said, hey, coach, I was just messing with you. And the thing about Jimmy is he had a plan. Obviously, he wanted to do things a certain way, and he wanted people that fit his dream or his plan. Because he always would say to us, we're going to practice like champions because someday we will be champions. And that was his mantra, and he believed it. He wanted guys that gave extraordinary effort. He said, you can only give 100%, and that's what I want. And he wanted guys that he could trust. That was big with him, his trust factor. I mean,
that first year had to be rough, though, 1-15 on the season. And the way it went down with Jimmy Johnson taking over for Tom Landry, there was a miscommunication with Jerry Jones, the way the whole thing was handled, because Landry had been coached 29 years. He was a Cowboy, an absolute icon.
He's an icon. And I mean, he's an icon from the standpoint being with the New York Giants, playing DB for the New York Giants, and then, being a pilot in the Air Force and things that he did in his life. He was an icon. And as a player, you look at it and say, I love Coach Landry. There's no question about it. But at some point, things change. It's just like now. The times change, and the times were changing. And unfortunately, he got caught up in the wash, just like all of us do as players and as coaches. And it was Jerry, as the buying the Dallas Cowboys, had the right to pick who he wanted to be his coach. Yeah. I have no problem with. And people don't know that Jerry offered Coach Landry to be the president of the Cowboys. He said, you don't fire Coach Landry. He said, you can't fire Coach Landry. And he offered him, and Coach Landry said, all I want to do is coach. I don't want to be a president.
Well, Coach Landry delayed something that you should be honored with, being in the Ring of Honor. He put it off a few years because there was a certain bitterness, and ultimately he accepted, being inducted into the Ring of Honor.
There's no question. It was Tom Landry walked on water. You'd hear the choir going when he walked out to practice. Lights was gone, and there'd be a glow. That was Tom Landry, and we all knew that. When he walked in the room, it was a certain thing, and it was it was a little bit. It was a lot of respect. But I mean, we'd have 5-hour meetings, and he critique every single position because he designed that offense. He designed the defense.
This might be hard for you to discuss because I could tell the respect you have for Coach Landry. But that last year, I think the Cowboys were 7-9. Your team. Was it starting to pass them by because the game evolves? It's a hard thing for you, I'm sure, to talk about because, like I said, how fond you seem to be of him.
Actually, it is. I think that he was going to change with the game. He was going to a 3-4, and the flex was really a 3-4 anyway. So
sure,
we were to a true. He had hired George Hill as the defensive coordinator, and Ernie Stopner would have been the defensive coordinator for many years, and he had hired him, and that was his last hurrah. But it didn't happen because obviously Jerry hired Jimmy, and I think he would have adjusted to it, but there were things that were out of his control. Players we had Randy White, who I worshiped the ground. I played it with him for 5 years next to him. Was getting older. Ed Too Tall Jones was getting older. Various keys to our offense and defense were getting older, and that was the thing. I was still a young player, and those guys were starting to age, and that's tough in the NFL when you don't have the influx of younger players coming in. And that's what happened to Coach Landry. Our drafts wasn't between me and Michael Irvin. There wasn't a draft pick that played for a substantial amount of years. And that's a long time. And before me, you can go back to it. And other than Harold Richards, Rod Hill didn't pan out, Larry Bethea, God rest his soul. But that's what was happening in the draft. We weren't pulling in those people to upgrade the roster. And that's what really happened. And that's things that happen when you have a long-term success. You see it with teams that have long-term success. It's just that your roster changes and you don't have people that can fit those roles later on or to help when somebody retires.
Right. So Jim, before we got one more break coming up and then we'll finish it up with the prediction of the Jets this year. But let's talk about the draft real quick. I mean, they pick up Zach Wilson. By all accounts, he should be a good quarterback. We'll find out. It's a big transition, as everybody knows, going from college to pros. They got a lineman we're talking about is the offensive line of the Jets, which has been abysmal for the last few years. They pick up Tucker, who's supposed to be an animal. They get wide receiver Elijah Moore, who we'll see how he pans out in the pros. Running back Michael Carter, I think, is going to be a surprise. I think he's going to be a really good NFL football player. And then they went defense. The Jets defense was not that good either last year. They pick up a linebacker and a couple cornerbacks. So it looks like they tried to address an overall need. They just didn't go offensive lineman. They didn't just go defense. They kind of spread it around a little bit. But in their first few picks, they got the positions they thought they needed. They get rid of they let Sam Darnold go to the Panthers, so they needed a quarterback. We knew that. And then they get the big lineman to go next to Becton, to get a good side of the line, two young players. And then they pick up their receiver at that spot and their running back. So it looks like they're trying to address the offense first there, Jim.
Yeah, and here's the thing you got to remember, Mac, and I always explain this to people about the NFL. When you play high school, that's like playing go-karts. You're playing in go-karts. When you play college, you move up to the dirt tracks. When you play in the NFL, you're in the big time in racing because the speed of the game changes. Where I was playing against guys my age in high school or close to me, they might have been 2 or 3 years older, same in college. But when you get to the NFL, you're playing with grown men. They might be 32, 35, 36 years old. They got families to support, and the speed of the game and everything that goes with it, you have to realize that this is a different game up there because these guys know what they're doing. You're learning what to do.
That's why the wishbone doesn't work in the NFL. It works in college. They run it all the time. And I could never figure it out.
He runs the wishbone.
I could never figure out why the wishbone could never work in the NFL. And you just explained it, the speed of the game.
It really is. It really is. It's the speed of the game that's going to get these younger guys. And there's some at certain positions, it doesn't. Corners, yes, really doesn't because you got to learn your technique and things. But on the interior lines, defense and offense, that speed is going to get them.
Just a question that you would be completely qualified, obviously, to answer, and I couldn't. The Jets' fourth-round pick, Michael Carter, he's a very short guy, something like 5'2", 5'3". Is it harder to tackle a shorter guy, let's say who's explosive, can keep a little lower because of his height? I mean, is it easier to tackle a taller guy than a shorter guy?
It is, because Eric Dickerson wasn't easy to tackle. He was a tall guy. He breaks the angle on you, but I've been against guys, like you said, it is pad level. But you got to remember, defensive linemen are big now. I mean, you got most of them in the interior average over 300, 320 pounds. So Michael Carter's probably not been hit with a guy that's that talented. And linebackers are bigger and are more athletic. And you got to think about these things. Now, can he have success? Yes, no question about it. Is his height going to be against him? Nah, it won't if he stays low and understands how the angles, everything. It's not always about athleticism. It's about what you see and how you do it. Emmitt Smith might have been, he was like Tony Dorsett. Tony Dorsett was probably one of the greatest athletes to ever play. I know people don't know that, but Emmett had great vision. He wasn't as athletic as Tony, but his vision, he saw things. He could see things develop. And that's the thing Carter's going to have to learn is how do things develop? How do those holes, where do you make changes in what you see?
Yeah. I mean, a lot of it too, I talked to Byron Williams about that. You got speed and then you got football speed. Football speed is bursts, moves, to get that angle. It doesn't matter how fast you are unless you get in the open field, no one's around you. I mean, but when you're running, most of the time, Jim, when I ran anyways, I was a running quarterback. I didn't have a lot of speed. I had a lot of quickness. And that's what got me my 10, 12 yards. To break one, I had no third gear at all, man. I'd slow right down and catch me. But during when I was running with the ball, it was from, the 10-yard burst, that cut, to get out of bounds as fast as I could before I got killed. I mean, that's what I concentrated on of, you know what I mean?
A perfect example is Barry Sanders. Barry Sanders is a once-in-a-lifetime running back. What he could do, you hated playing Barry Sanders because he is the only player. I'm on his highlight film, but every player that ever played in the NFL against him is on his highlight film. I mean, but those guys are rare. Those guys are rare. And that's the thing you got to remember. Carter has got a chance to be successful, because there's been a lot of running backs that have come that have been successful that you don't look at and have that wow factor. Barry Sanders had the wow factor.
No doubt about it.
The Jets drafted another Michael Carter, ironically, two in the same draft. The other one's a cornerback from Duke, but he's only 5'8" tall. Is that a severe handicap for a cornerback? Because I know if I'm a coach, I want a bigger cornerback because the wide receivers are so athletic and there's so many jump balls where the quarterback just puts it up one-on-one in isolation. And 5'8", I mean, he better be a heck of a leaper.
I understand what you say, but look at it like this. He could play the slots because slots are usually smaller. You very rarely see taller slots. It depends on what are they playing in zone, and they're banging the receivers and playing those safeties high and things like that. What kind of defense are they playing? And you have to understand that a smaller corner can get away with playing the cover 2 zones and stuff if that's what he does. Or they might have brought him in to play the slots, the quicker guys, because he'll be a quicker guy, and obviously he'll be an intelligent player being from Duke.
Right? It's a great point. So, folks, we're going to take a quick break, and we'll be right back on the side. And we're going to start talking about the Jets season and the tough. It used to be one of the easier divisions not too long ago. But, man, has it gotten tougher in the last couple of years. And the Patriots made some moves. The Bills should be good. Miami, depending on Tua, could do something this year. And the Jets have got to play all those teams twice. So it's not going to be easy for them. But the schedule isn't hard as you think. And I think the Jets are going to do a lot more better than people think. They're at least going to be more competitive. But I think they'll put a couple extra wins up there, too. So we're going to be right back, and we're going to see what Jack and Jim think about that. Stick with us, folks. Back in a couple minutes.
When you hear the word asthma, you probably think of shortness of breath, coughing, or inhalers. Lots of things can trigger asthma, but the fact is that asthma doesn't just attack, it can kill. But with proper medical management, asthma is controllable. If you experience shortness of breath, wheezing, tightness in your chest, or persistent nighttime coughing, you may have asthma. See your doctor and get the facts. You'll breathe easier. For more information, call 211 Info Line. A message from the Connecticut Department of Public Health, keeping Connecticut healthy.
Hi, Grandma. What's for dinner?
Hey, honey, I'm making stew tonight.
Ooh, can Nina come over?
I'm not sure about our new friend. I wonder if there's been any drinking going on. Alcohol at her age can lead to so many bad things. I've been meaning to ask you, what would happen if someone offered you a drink?
Grandma?
This is hard. She's so young, but I know I need to talk to her about it now before someone tries to give her alcohol. If anyone ever does offer you a drink, I want you to say no. I have too much respect for my family, and I don't want to get in trouble.
Okay.
Really?
I promise, Grandma. I love you too.
Okay, how about tasting this stew and telling me what you think?
Some children may try alcohol as young as 9 years old. It's not too early to talk about drinking. For tips on how to begin the conversation, visit underagedrinking.samhsa.gov. That's underagedrinking.samhsa.gov. This message brought to you by SAMHSA and this station. We all make choices. When it comes to alcohol, kids make choices whether to drink or not.
Bye-bye. Remember, I'm going to Alex's party tonight and sleeping over.
Hey, have a seat for a second. Remind me about that party again.
And adults make choices whether to talk about it. That's true of parents and every other trusted adult in a kid's life. Kids want to know our expectations when it comes to alcohol and other drugs. They want guidance and honest answers to their questions. And it makes a difference when the message is consistent and part of everyday conversations. So talk with your kids and help lead them on a positive path. Because when you talk, they hear you. For more information about talking with your kids about underage use of alcohol and other drugs, visit underagedrinking.samhsa.gov.
I mean, you can see right now, without LeBron, Lakers are struggling.
Let me tell you about a team I hate, all right? I know the Dallas Cowboys fan is here, so I had to make sure he knew how much I hate this team.
I'm ready.
I've often said that the people who run baseball, they try very hard to ruin it.
I'm from Brooklyn. I don't have a problem saying it to his face. Oh, I'm from Brooklyn. Hey, guys, any...
Good morning, everyone, and welcome back to the Mac and Jack Sports Show. This is our last day of the week, folks, before we're back on Wednesday. We're on Wednesday through Sunday, 8 to 10 a.m. And, folks, what a show we're having today, as we had Robert Butler on earlier, the host of Sports Scope, and joining us as a guest host for our last part of the show here is the great Jim Jeffcoat. Again, Jack disappeared, and that happens quite a bit during the show. Jim, he's not the greatest technical person.
There you go.
he just pops in and out. He just, I'll be talking in mid-sentence, and he'll disappear, and then he'll pop back in, and I've learned to deal with it, man. He's older, and he doesn't know the technical aspects as well as he should. But it's always fun. With him on
Utah heard him talking about him.
It could be Jim. He could be Utah could be at his house right now, and Jack's defended himself, taking his boxing stance. So we'll see what's going on. So Jim, this part, just before we go back to it, I take care of a little business. We are the Mac and Jack Sports Show. We're on Northeast Streaming Sports, a sports network that is growing fast. 100,000 combined followers to the last and growing. Please subscribe to the YouTube channel. Check on their Facebook page out. We're also on Zodiac TV, Global TV. We're global reaching now on Northeast Streaming Sports. And we're also, if you can't make it to a screen, we are on iHeartRadio, iTunes, Pandora, and Spotify. And that thing's really starting to explode over there. So hopefully, unless Jack's wife got mad at him, he'll be back in a little bit. I don't know. Oh, Jesus, God. Oh, my God. He keeps me going crazy sometimes, but that's why I love him. So, Jim, until he gets back, let's start talking.
Jim show, we got to correct that.
Right. We got to change that. I got to get the producer to edit that now. Oh, my God. But anyway, maybe it's something important. Maybe something happened. Probably shouldn't even laugh about it.
I hope everything's
hopefully he's good. So anyway, so Jim, we're going to start with the season, and of course, these are the games that maybe the Jets could possibly win. There's no way to really predict who's going to do what, and I think they're going to be a lot more competitive. I think there's going to be a little bit more fire underneath them. And Jack has popped back in, as I said. Oh, Lord. Here he is. We'll bring him back aboard.
I
Hey, Jack, great to see you.
Laptops. It went off, and all of a sudden it's giving me instructions what to do, and I'm not tech savvy. So I have my backup system, which is called my iPad that I'm on right now. So
Yes.
Hey, Jack, while you were gone, we changed the show. It's the Mac and Jim show now.
Yes. So
I mean, I think Max sabotaged me by getting me off there. I was suspicious going into this show. I mean,
yes. You had him. He had him very nervous bringing you on, Jim. He was all nervous. He goes, "I'm going to be a bench player now." He was telling me all this.
Yeah, I mean, I finally think I'm getting a little playing time in the. It gets pulled from me. The coach is telling me I'm going to get to talk football, and then I'm told, well, not this week.
Yes, he entertains me, and he'll do this like I said, Jim, before he got back on. All of a sudden, I'll be talking to Jack, and he'll just disappear, and I'm like, okay, whatever. I've gotten used to it now, which is pretty. I guess I got to be flexible when it comes to Jack, when it comes to technology. But so, Jack, I just said to Jim, I think that the Jets are going to be a lot more competitive this year. I think with a new coach, there's going to be a new sense of urgency, a little bit more fire underneath them. But I don't think the record's going to improve immensely, but I think they will pick up a few extra wins, and I think they're going to be in a lot more games than they were last year.
I don't think Jim knows I'm a lifelong Jet fan, a big Jet fan. They won the Super Bowl when I was in high school. That was one of the great days of my life. I'm a grandfather now, and they haven't been back to the Super Bowl. I'm hoping, by the time I'm a great-great-grandfather, they win the Super Bowl. They haven't even been back to the Super Bowl. I mean, that's how bad it's kind of been. And listen, this year I have no illusions. It's all about just improving. There were 2-14, 17-game schedule. It's less about the record to me this year than the progress that they're making going forward.
Exactly.
And I told Jim, I said, listen, this is only the games we think they're possibly have a decent chance of winning. At least, 60-40 the other team maybe, but they got a chance. Bill Parcells said there's 5 plays during the game. Normally that ends up winning or losing the game for you. And I believe that with all my heart. When I coach, I preach the same thing. You put your pants on the same way. Normally the teams are pretty equal. Some teams have a little bit more talent, but those 5 plays, that interception, that fumble, that penalty, whatever it is, those 5 plays normally is what causes you either to win or lose the game. And I think if you have a coach that has better communication skills than you had, they might win some of those games that they might lose, in other words. You know what I mean?
Well, I agree with you, Mac. But let me ask Jim something. Nick Saban made a remark some weeks ago that the game of football has changed, that it used to be about field position. And he said it's no longer about field position because the offenses are so explosive now and can move the ball so quickly that the nature of the game has changed somewhat. What's your reaction to that?
I agree 100%. Being a coach at every level, and especially the past few years in college, I saw the game change that way because the offenses open up and they can attack you in different ways now, where expectation on first down was a lot of run, but you have teams that use the pass to get 5 yards, the teams that use the pass to start off with a 7-yard gain. So you don't have the things that you thought were going to happen anymore. They're unpredictable. Offenses are unpredictable. You look at, I always use them as examples. Kansas City is how explosive they are. And Mahomes is obviously a great quarterback. And even you look at Tampa Bay with a more stationary quarterback as Tom Brady, but they're not traditional anymore. Tom Brady might throw a 7-yard out on first down. Now you're on 2nd and 3, so the offenses do have advantage, and they can change field position on the long play, just like you mentioned with the receivers, the big receivers. You can change field position. You just got to keep things in front of you and down, make them go the long way. And that's more difficult now with the explosive offenses. You got to make them go, instead of 3-play drives, you got to make them go 10, 15, because there's obviously a chance that there can be a mistake the longer you go.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that. But I have a theory on that, and we'll talk about that later in shows. Let's get back to the Jets. They open against Carolina, but it's at Carolina. And I just think that Carolina is a little farther along than the Jets right now. I don't expect them to win the first game in Carolina, guys. What do you think?
It's competitive, though.
Yes.
I think it'll be very competitive, and they probably won't. They'll probably go like you mentioned earlier, Mac, is a similar trajectory as the Cowboys did. They won't win games, but they'll get more competitive as the season progresses.
Agree.
And it's a thing that you got to realize. And people are going to say, well, they're not winning games. But they're becoming more of a team. They're going in the right direction. You can lose, and you hate to say that, and go to the right direction. And you can win and not, because you have, it's a mirage.
Guys, but I think there are two games actually going on. The one for the standings, who wins the game between Carolina and the Jets, and the other who wins the quarterback battle, Sam Darnold and Zach Wilson, because, the Jets especially don't want to get embarrassed. If Sam Darnold has a really big game and Zach Wilson struggles, people are going to start saying, well, maybe they shouldn't have made the move. Maybe they should have hung on to Darnold and drafted maybe Kyle Pitts, the tight end, gotten him some help here with the Jets. So I think the Jets are going to be very conscious of that game. As long as Zach Wilson performs well, even if they lose the game, it's not going to be as devastating a loss.
Yeah.
So what do you think? What do you think, Jack? Do you think it's a loss or a win for the Jets?
I hate. First, let me say this just very quickly. I hate doing this, Jim.
I know you do, Jack. You tell me this every week. Please, Jack, just make a pick.
If I had to say, I'm going to go out on the limb that the Jets are going to win the game.
Okay, cool. Excellent. So then they got the Patriots after that, guys. I don't think the Jets have any way they're going to beat the Patriots, especially in the second.
No. And back to Carolina, you didn't talk about the X factor, Christian McCaffrey.
Very good. Yeah. Good point.
But back now to the Patriots, I don't think so either. I think the Patriots are very disciplined, very organized, and Cam Newton is going to be better his second year. But I think another game, people are going to be shocked how competitive the Jets are.
Yeah, but the Carolina game, there's a double X factor. Robbie Anderson, wide receiver, who the Jets gave up on playing. He's going to be motivated, him and Sam Darnold, to have a big game.
And New England, don't be surprised if they get Julio Jones.
Yes. So what do you think about the Patriots, Jack?
I can't pick the Jets to beat the Patriots. You know what it is with the Patriots. We talked about quarterbacks a moment ago. It's the Mac Jones watch. At what point is Mac Jones going to see the field? But then there's this little element of doubt I have. I've always liked Cam Newton. What happens if he really hasn't lost it in the offense, which is going to be improved this year? The players around him really perform well. Can Cam Newton approach his MVP form of the past? Because if he could just be, 75% of the quarterback he was before, he's the guy you want, on the field.
Yes.
Yeah, that's a good point. Denver, they play next. I think this is a chance. We're talking possibilities. Even though Denver has a pretty good young team, I think this is a chance for the Jets to get their first win, guys.
Interesting. I don't think so.
Okay.
I think just what you said about Carolina, I think Denver is farther ahead, and that's nothing against the New York Jets. And Denver has a solid defense. Fangio is a defensive guru. I mean, that's where I think the difference is, because it's in Denver, and they're going to attack them. Denver's going to go after them, because that's probably
Jim, who's starting for Denver quarterback? Teddy Bridgewater, Drew Lock, or Aaron Rodgers?
I would say Drew Lock. I think that Bridgewater will back him up. And I think Locke got better as the season progressed. And I think he, like I said, he's on a trajectory going up. I think what makes Denver scary is that defense. And then
I agree.
and that is a very, just like you talk about other leagues, that is a very competitive league, that AFC West.
Yes,
You
it
got
is.
good teams on it in that
Yeah.
league.
You count the Chargers; it's very competitive. They played it.
I'll
They
go
played-
with Denver in that game. For
Okay.
Ryan, if I have
Okay,
to.
so we've got the Titans next. The Titans kind of had an off year because they had a big year the year before. I think the Titans will get it back together again. I don't think the Jets can beat the Titans. It might be more competitive, but I think the Titans got more experience and they've been winning games more than the Jets have over the last few years. So I go with the Titans with that one.
I'm going to disagree with you on that. I think the Jets have a good opportunity to get their first win. And the reason I say that is because of how the Titans are built. And I think the Jets can handle some of the things. Obviously, you got Derrick Henry and you got the receiver at Tennessee. But I think the Jets have a chance in this game if they don't turn the ball over and can control it. Like you said, the Titans are not an explosive team. They're grind you and beat you down. I think the Jets will have an opportunity to have their first win of the season.
No, Corey Davis came over from Tennessee as a free agent to the Jets, so he's going to want to have a big game. The night we had the NFL draft show, Jim, you were saying running backs can only last so long. Is this going to be the year that Derrick Henry perhaps starts declining a little bit, or what?
No.
Because he's been the workhorse for that team. It's rare that a running back carries an offense in this day and age in the NFL, but he's the one running back that really carries the Tennessee Titan offense.
Exactly. And he's got extraordinary size. I mean, he's bigger than some D linemen.
Listen, that's the reason why I think the Titans will win it, just because I don't think the Jets defense will be able to stop Henry. But
it's easier to stop a running game than it is an explosive passing game. Because
we'll see.
Hated tackling guys like Derrick Henry, right?
Just have a lot of guys tackling.
You're lucky you didn't run into Jim Brown back in the day. No one wanted. He put fear in defensive line.
Jack, who do you got? Who do you got against the Titans? Win or loss?
I'm going to give the Jets a win.
All right.
I think Tennessee is going to take a little step backwards. I'm not high on Ryan Tannehill. Quarterback. He's a game manager.
Yes.
And if you don't have the personnel around you to manage, what are you going to do?
We'll see. The Jets then go against the Falcons. I say the Jets have a possibility of beating the Falcons. Julio Jones is gone. The Falcons have a decent defense, a pretty good offense, but I think the Jets kind of start getting it together by that game. I think they got a chance to upset the Falcons.
I agree with you 100%. The Falcons have a long way to go, and they're behind where the Jets are at this point because just like you said with the draft picks, the Jets got Zach Wilson or start getting understanding what's going on and how to play in the league. As long as he stays healthy, the offensive line will start to gel a little bit more. I'm going to pick the Jets.
If Zach Wilson could be another Justin Herbert his first year, I would think so, but I don't know. I mean, I'm going to have to feel the Falcons. I know Julio Jones is leaving, but between Calvin Ridley and Kyle Pitts is considered by many the best player, coming out of the draft. Games like that, don't you think the Falcons are looking at their schedule and they're looking at the Jets and they're looking at them as being a weak link as well? I mean, did you do that as a player? Did you look at the schedule beforehand? And even though you're not supposed to do it, you're thinking, okay, we should win this game. We should win that game.
There's no question about that. And you're right, we did. But the thing is that the reality of it, I think the Jets are, even with Pitts, the Jets have a great opportunity to get a win here. So there'll be 2 wins back to back. And everybody will be saying, they're going to the Super Bowl.
Here they go. What do you think, Jack? You think the Falcons will get the best of them?
If I had to say, I haven't given up on the Falcons. I think Matt Ryan's got, a bit left in the tank. And obviously the Falcons do too. They didn't try to draft a young quarterback. So.
Matt Ryan is the same age.
Yes.
Listen, that was speaking of Bill Parcells.
Jack, we gotta get through this, man. We got like another 6 minutes. I know you love to tell stories.
All right, I lost track of time here.
Okay, well that's because we got a lot of great conversation going on. Pats again, can't beat the Pats. They can't beat them this year. They'll play them tough, but I don't think they can beat them.
No, I don't either.
Yeah, I agree.
So then they get the Bengals. We don't know how good Burrows is going to be coming off that leg. The Bengals are a beatable team. I give the Jets a good shot at beating the Bengals.
They can't beat the Bengals. Throw in the towel then.
Right.
They should beat the Bengals.
So that's one game we are all in agreement. The Colts, I don't care who's quarterback. They got one of the toughest defenses in the league. They got one of the best running games in the league. 2 good running backs. I don't think they can beat the Colts.
Me either. I think the Colts will win.
Jack?
I'm gonna go with the Jets. I can't.
Wow.
Carson Wentz a quarterback.
That's
you're
my
big upset. The big upset for the Jets for the season. They're one.
They got the Bills next. I don't think they can beat the Bills this year.
I don't think so.
No.
Okay.
Buffalo's
he played for the Bills. What do you want us to say?
Bills, but the Buffalo is a different place.
Interesting game to me coming up. They're playing Miami. I think it's at home. I think this is one of the East teams that the Jets can beat, and I pick them to beat Miami at home. The first big win in the AFC East.
As long as Miami doesn't do the fake spike and throw the touchdown, I think the Jets have an opportunity.
Now Tua blossoms this year. He's
Tua is a lot of hype, Jack. We're gonna find out about Tua this year. Okay, so we got Houston. If they can't beat Houston, that dysfunctional organization, never mind the Bengals. If they can't beat Houston, then you throw in the towel. I think they beat Houston.
Houston's not winning a game this year.
I don't know about that.
I think they can beat Houston.
They got the Eagles. Eagles with a new quarterback. We're not sure about them. Their offensive linebacker is back, though. They got a couple of key pieces on defense. I think it's going to be a real tough game. I think the Jets could win this.
Is it in Philly?
I don't have that in front of me right now, Jack. But
it's close enough, the 2 locations. I'm going to go with Philly to nip the Jets.
How about you, Jim?
I think the Jets have an opportunity. I think Philly's in the process.
The Saints, I don't care who's quarterback. I think the Saints are just got a great coach. They got a great team. I think the Saints will beat the Jets.
I would agree.
I think so, but I think the Saints aren't as serious as Super Bowl contenders they've been the last few years, though.
No, not at all. The Jags, interesting game. The 2 worst teams in football last year, even without Trevor Lawrence. The Jags were in a lot of games. I don't know if they tried to lose them at the end or not. I don't believe any football player would do that because his job's on the line and there's tape on him. So I don't think that's necessarily true. I think that they will lose to the Jags.
I don't think so. I think the Jets have an opportunity.
Wow.
I'll go with the Jets, but I think Tim Tebow will catch his only touchdown pass this season, a 2-yarder. Okay.
Oh, Jack. You might, who knows? So they finish up, guys, with the Bucs and the Bills, 2 playoff Super Bowl contenders. The Bucs were there last year, won it. The Bills had a bad game in one of the championship game against KC. I think they can't lose. I think they finish on a bad note. But I'll tell you what, I think they give the Bills all they can handle last game, but they lose both of them.
Yeah.
I would agree. And they'll be getting ready for that draft again and get a really good pick.
I think we gave the Jets a lot more wins than we thought. I got them getting 6. And let me count you up. You're pretty close to me, Jim. You got them winning. I think you got them winning 7. Jack,
I got them winning 7?
7 games possibly. So, Jack, he has more faith in your team than you do. You only got him winning 5.
Yeah, listen, 5-12. It's 5 and 6-11, in that range, I'd say off the top of my head.
Yes,
There's
yes.
improvement there. I mean,
I
what's
agree.
considered a good year for the Jets? If they go 8-9, that's a good year.
8-9 would be like a Super Bowl year
I can't
for him.
relate to a 17.
That's right. I
game
keep forgetting there's an extra game. Yeah, that's
right. That's right. So
relate to that, making predictions. 17.
So I got him going 6-11. Jim, a big Jet supporter, has him going 7-10. That's right, 7-10. Wow. And Jack, you got him going 5-12. So, I mean, it looks like we all think the Jets are going to be really good this year, competitive-wise, that they're going to take a step forward. And as you said, Jim, next year, more draft picks are coming to them. And if they start something a good base, they may have a shot next year and maybe getting closer to the playoffs.
Dak will get his dream. They'll have a
No,
sir. Yes,
my
they will.
dream. It's far
I'm not a
away.
Jets
That's
fan.
what it is. It's a dream.
Yes.
But what we didn't say, we're talking about all the improvements the Jets are making, but the bottom line is Buffalo, Miami, New England. That means last place for the Jets in the division. I don't see them beating anyone out.
But they'll have an opportunity out of the division. So that
I agree. They got a very favorable schedule. Folks, thanks for tuning in. This sadly comes to an end. And we'll be back Wednesday, 8 to 10 a.m. We'll have Philly Sports Guy. I might have another special guest lined up. We'll see what happens. Jim, thanks for coming in. Will you be able to do the show? Be able to do the show with us next week at the Eagles?
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll have Jim back with the Eagles as we slowly work Jim into Jack's frenzied attitude. And
you're treating Jim like he's a young player, you know. You fit him into certain
Hey, listen.
spots.
If I was a GM, listen, I would have no problem.
Mac
Jim Jeffco today.
You would be strictly a third down player, Jim, for the first couple of years of your career.
That's fine.
That's all the sacks he would get, though, Jack. All your
quarterbacks anyway.
Okay, that's it.
There you go. All right, folks. Thanks for tuning in. We'll be back Wednesday. Enjoy your Sunday, and thanks for tuning in today.